We ended up seizing and resolving 140 plus systemically important financial institutions for the US government. Through that process, I got really deep exposure to just how corrupt the global financial system was. Of the hundreds that we closed during the financial crisis, I would say it's safe to assume that virtually all of them had less than 50% of their demand deposits. The government's going to lie to you right up until the moment that they don't have to lie to you anymore, or they can't lie to you anymore. It will mean that open source non-custodial software developers will not be prosecuted anymore.
Kyle, off the plane, Uber to Presidio, check in at the lodge. Can't talk about why I'm here, so we'll start over. Kyle, off the plane, straight to Presidio Bitcoin. And we got introduced to each other yesterday via text.
Formally, yeah. Long-time listener, big fan, but and we've also both been in the community for a long time. But yeah, first time meeting in person. COVID, I think, put 5+ years on pretty much everybody getting to meet one another. So it's great to finally meet you in person.
You as well. Like I was telling you, my last time in SF was 2019, so it's been 6 years, and a lot has changed since then. Actually, the last time I was in SF, my producer's going to get pissed because he hates when I start out with dad talk, but I found out my wife was pregnant with our first son. So,
oh, wow.
That's
very auspicious.
Very special city for me in that way.
Yeah. Well, welcome back.
It's great to be back. The vibes are high here. As you can see, if you're watching, we've got the Golden Gate Bridge right behind us.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful place.
Yeah, Presidio Bitcoin's gorgeous. We're incredibly lucky that we now have this place in San Francisco. So, I've been involved in the community here for a long time, but we haven't really had a home until Presidio Bitcoin got restarted on kind of like the post-COVID window. And so, yeah, it's been really wonderful for us to like actually have a congregation place. Like the rest of the country has, Bitcoin Park and all these other places, Pubkey, various spots around the country. So, we got this gorgeous location. It's incredibly aesthetically compelling. So, you work on hard problems here, walk out the door, take a walk on the beach, look at the Golden Gate Bridge. It's hard to beat.
Listen, I want to piss off Chain Code, Bitcoin Park, Nashville, Bitcoin Park, Austin, the space in Denver, which I haven't been to yet, so I probably shouldn't add them to this. But this is the most inspiring Bitcoin space I've been to in terms of the visual aesthetics and the vibe. Energy's high here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's today? Is it Tuesday?
Today is a Tuesday.
Today is a Tuesday. I'm losing track of time here. It's like Tuesday, office is filled. But like I said, we got introduced or reintroduced via text yesterday via Connor Brown, good friend of mine, good friend of the show. And obviously there's a lot going on the Hill with the Clarity Act. Is it going to get sort of injected into the market structure bill? If so, what is included? But before we get to that, just before we hit record, you're telling me about your history before Bitcoin and what ultimately led you to Bitcoin, which goes back to my radicalizing moment and what put me into Bitcoin in a different way, which is the Great Financial Crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. The Great Financial Crisis, I think for everybody our age or our generation, was a very formative event, right, in a lot of different ways. But yeah, my backstory here was that, I graduated right into the financial crisis, and I was an aerospace engineer, but by training, like academically. But when the whole world's blowing up and everybody's getting laid off and everything's in kind of chaos, you can't get a job unless you've got many years of experience in an industry like that. And so I ended up going into strategy consulting, which was a nice way to kind of bridge the technical, non-technical, divide there. And the very first thing that my consulting firm was doing was seizing banks for the U.S. government that were failing during the financial crisis. So, here I ended up having this insane situation where I was banging my head on the wall trying to get a job to go out and do moonshots. Right. That was literally what I got my degree for, because, why not? Like, we should be doing big, important things in the world, right? We should be changing the world with our time and our energy here. And and then I just, got the hook from on the stage, and it was, life had a different plan in store. So I ended up going out, and it wasn't just me. I mean, there were hundreds of other people in the consulting firm, but we ended up seizing and resolving 140 plus systemically important financial institutions for the US government on behalf of the FDIC. And through that process, I got really deep exposure to just how decrepit, corrupt, choose your adjective, the global financial system was, and kind of just how shaky everything had become at that point in time. And I guess thus began my trip down the rabbit hole. And that ended up leading me to Bitcoin. And then I've subsequently been involved first as a political activist in that kind of 2009 to 2011 zone. And then later on, once I wasn't a ramen poor college student and had accumulated some capital, I started making investments. And I spent the better part of a decade here in Silicon Valley building Web2 unicorns. And then, as the political climate started shifting in the last couple of years and Bitcoiners could actually be out without, kind of fear of reprisal and retribution publicly, then I started shifting over into the policy side of things. And so I was advising presidential campaigns last year because I felt like it was super important that we kind of get on the political map, so to speak, as Bitcoiners and, actually start influencing the levers of power. And then this year I've spent all year working on Save Our Wallets and, kind of the advocacy around the market structure bill. So it's been a long, weird detour for me getting back to Bitcoin after, 10 years of trying to figure out how I could, reinsert myself into the market.
Well, Kyle, we're going to go back because I need to know what happens when you seize banks. I think going all the way back to what radicalized you, what did you see? What was that process? What was the spectrum of sort of bank balance sheets, the executive management, how the spectrum of corruption, were some just poorly capitalized, were some doing overtly corrupt things? Was there fraud involved?
Oh, yeah.
What happens when the government seizes a bank?
Yeah, yes to all of the above, really. Yeah, there's a lot of different things I could say there, right? I threw the first bank executive in jail in Lower Manhattan since the SNL crisis while I was involved with this project. I was deeply involved in, the resolution of hundreds of billions of dollars worth of financial institutions, all of which were, I can't name specific banks or, specific details, but of the hundreds that we closed during the financial crisis, I would say it's safe to assume that virtually all of them had less than 50% of their demand deposits at the bank at the time that they were seized by the US government. So just think about that, right? If it's, demand deposits, that's not even...
That's not reserves, right?
That's not even assets.
Yeah.
Right? That's not even saying if our assets perform and ultimately, we can, make money in the long term. It was just, we don't even have the money to pay half of our depositors' savings accounts if they came into the bank today. So, it was very much it's a wonderful life moment for me, being involved in this. And it was crazy. There were so many things that we did, you asked mechanically, what is it like to close a bank? It's very cloak and dagger, right? We would have these banks on what was called the kill list for months, where we were observing them, doing financial reporting on them, trying to reconstruct their balance sheets as a regulator, right? On the outside, you don't want to tip them off that they're on the kill list or that they're going to get closed, because then that they start dusting their tracks, or, the people who are committing fraud start to button things up. And by the time that a bank actually would end up getting closed, we would depends on the size of the bank and, these sorts of things. WAMU was literally hundreds of people for 6 to 9 months, right? It was a very involved process. But smaller banks, it might be, a team of 10 or 15 that go out. But for these sorts of things, we would go out, we would pre-position days in advance of the closure. The team would book hotels under fake names and register conference rooms under, fake companies. We would sit and everybody would have a briefing about what was going on with the bank and what was to be expected when we were going to close it. And then, as we come up to the actual day of on Friday, everybody gets positioned in black unmarked cars in the parking lot outside these banks. You join a conference call with the governor of the state, who often is the one who has to revoke the charter on behalf of the state government that it's chartered under, and then hand it over to the U.S. government, to the FDIC, the Division of Resolutions and Receiverships. And so we'd all be sitting on a conference call. And there was one occasion, for instance, where I was sitting on a conference call in all of these cars in the parking lot with like 100 people, and the governor didn't revoke the charter, and for whatever reason they decided that it wasn't going to happen, and so all of these people just kind of quietly drive away, and nobody in the bank is any the wiser. But in most scenarios, what happens is the governor says, "Yeah, we're revoking your charter. You're being seized by the U.S. government." Everybody pops out the doors, just classic Fed style, and we all march up to the door, and you put your foot in the door at 4:58 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, and you say, "Hi, I'm here from the U.S. government, and I'm here to seize your bank. We're going to need you all to work all weekend, and I'm going to need your cooperation for everything that we're going to do." And then we would spend 72 hours or so flash escrowing the bank, trying to clean up its balance sheet, do a forensic analysis, determine whether the good assets, the bad assets, and then depending on whether there was an acquirer or not, you would either cut it into good bank, bad bank, or there's some kind of a loss sharing agreement with the U.S. government. There's, as you might expect, in all of those things, there are a lot of different ways for politics to insert themselves, and for people to kind of put their own thumb on the scale and influence the outcomes. So I saw, quite a lot of crazy things during that time.
The bigger banks saying, "I want this to roll up into me," or is it? You don't have to get too specific. I know it's.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's like one thing that I can say, for instance, right? Like I'm gonna carefully avoid naming names just for the sake of avoiding lawsuits, but there are executives who are in charge of large financial institutions who were responsible for the crisis, caused hundreds of billions, if not trillions worth of collateral damage to the broad economy and, middle class people both in the United States and around the world. And not only were they not punished, those people were able to form vulture funds on the outside to come back and bid on the assets
pennies on the dollar.
For pennies on the dollar. And so these people didn't just rinse the American public once. They rinsed the American public again and again and again. And frankly, there were almost no consequences for a lot of these people.
And did you ultimately become jaded by that process and decide to go Silicon Valley, focus on Web 2.0? Or is it, hey, financial crisis is over, opportunities here now, I can go do something that's more aligned with me?
Yeah, generally speaking, I actually made one quick trip. The firm needed me to work on the housing crisis after I worked on the financial side of the financial crisis. I ended up going and doing a bunch of the actual home mortgage stabilization work, and so I helped make sure that the entire housing market didn't completely fall apart, in addition to all the banks afterward. But yeah, after a few years of that, it got to the point where I was like, yeah, I got to go do something more honest. I got to work on something that's actually changing the world for the better or improving it. And at that point in time, Silicon Valley was the spot. So I just hope and a prayer, got on a plane, arrived in Silicon Valley, and I got very lucky to have helped participate and build some pretty large companies in the time that I've been here. But now I'm kind of, I hate to say, but I'm coming a little bit jaded about kind of the tech industry now as well, and the direction of transit, of how things are going there. And so, yeah, this is part of the reasons for circling back to the Bitcoin community and coming kind of home, so to speak, to where my true desires to change the world lie.
Well, I think we need to set up all this historical context to get to the Save Our Wallets campaign. What did you do when you got here?
In Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
So I've kind of done a little bit of everything. So as I mentioned, I was an aerospace engineer by training. So for everybody here in Silicon Valley, that means I'm non-technical, right? I'm kind of useless when it comes to writing the code, but I'm very useful when it comes to architecting systems and go to market and everything like that. So I've been a product and strategy leader the entire time, but most people in Silicon Valley tend to go very T-shaped. So they have like a deep expertise in like one particular area, right? It's like I might be a payments guy, and it's just payments company, right? Whereas I have a little bit more of an intellectual curiosity. So I ended up working for one of the really large software development companies. So I was making software for software developers, which is about the most academically abstract thing that you can imagine, but was critically important for understanding how the world is actually being shaped today, and kind of like how companies shape the world in Silicon Valley. And then from there, I went to build a couple of very large logistics and global freight forwarding businesses. And those guys ended up becoming incredibly important during COVID. And so, I kind of had that experience. And then, having been involved in the Bitcoin community for, I guess, 15 years now, I also saw the entire rise and fall, or whatever you want to call it, of, kind of the token economy here in Silicon Valley. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. It's been a totally wild ride.
What was the token economy like on the ground? Because obviously I've been paying attention to it. I was in New York, Austin for a bit. And New York, I'd say much more so than Austin. There was a lot of the tokenomics and grifting, for lack of a better term, around that ecosystem. But from what I understand, it was pretty heavy out here too.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like what's the fastest way to describe this for somebody who has very low context on what Silicon Valley and the token economy would be like. So the thing that I would say is that like a lot of people out here in Silicon Valley really believe in the power of software, right? And actually, Andreas Antonopoulos had a really great line about this, I think back in like 2015 or maybe 2017 or something like that, where he said the thing that Bitcoiners don't understand is software, and the thing that Ethereans don't understand is money, right? And I actually think that that's probably one of like the truest single statements that I've ever heard, right? And you kind of tend to find people who are very dogmatic about one or the other.
Yep.
For a long, long time, I was one of the only people who believed in both. Right. I both believe in the immense power of open source software. Like I would never, ever, ever, ever bet against open source software, because on a long enough time horizon, you're never going to beat the crowd, right? Like somebody sufficiently motivated with freedom to build and utilize open resources, like that will win on a long enough time horizon. But at the same time, the token economy has a lot of perverse incentives. And so both as an investor and then as a participant, I've seen people with good intentions. It's kind of like the ring in Lord of the Rings, right? I mean, everybody thinks that they're, the moral champion until they have to wear the ring.
Yep.
And when you have the power and you wear the ring, maybe I'll just take a little bit here for me. And, maybe we'll just, do this thing that kicks back some value to my venture investors, or, whatever. So you just kind of see it was really an important and profound lesson in the purity of Bitcoin as a project and as a community, because we don't trust, we verify in Bitcoin, right? And I think that that's incredibly important, right? Like free market incentives, verification, like these sorts of things are really important, and I think sadly lacking in a lot of the token economy.
Sup, freaks? This rip is brought to you by our good friends at Silent. Silent creates everyday Faraday gear that protects your hardware. We're in Bitcoin. We have a lot of hardware that we need to secure. Your wallet emits signals that can leave you vulnerable. You want to pick up Silent's gear, put your hardware in that. I have a tap signer right here. I got the Silent card holder, replaced my wallet. I was using Ridge Wallet because it's secured against RFID signal jacking. Silent, the card holder, does the same thing. It's much sleeker, fits in my pocket much easier. I also have the Faraday phone sleeve, which you can put a hardware wallet in. We're actually using it for our keys at the house too. There's been a lot of robberies. They have essential Faraday slings, Faraday backpacks. It's a Bitcoin company. They're running on a Bitcoin standard. They have a Bitcoin treasury. They accept Bitcoin via Strike. So go to slnt.com/TFTC to get 15% off anything, or simply just use the code TFTC when shopping at slnt.com. Patented technology, special operations approved. It has free shipping as well. So go check it out. Sup, freaks? Have you noticed that governments have become more despotic? They want to surveil more. They want to take more of your data. They want to follow you around the internet as much as possible so that they can control your speech, control what you do. It's imperative in times like this to make sure that you're running a VPN as you're surfing the web, as we used to say back in the 90s. And it's more imperative that you use the right VPN, a VPN that cannot log because of the way that it's designed. And that's why we have partnered with Obscura. That is our official VPN here at TFTC, built by a Bitcoiner, Carl Dong, for Bitcoiners focused on privacy. You can pay in Bitcoin over the Lightning. So not only are you private while you're perusing the web with Obscura, but when you actually set up an account, you can acquire that account privately by paying in Bitcoin over the Lightning Network. Do not be complacent when it comes to protecting your privacy on the internet. Go to obscura.net, set up an Obscura account, use the code TFTC for 25% off. And when I say account, you just get a token. It's a string of token. It's not connected to your identity at all. Token sign up, pay with Bitcoin, completely private. Turn on Obscura, surf the web privately. Obscura.net, use the code TFTC for 25% off.
It's funny. I always have to zoom out, put myself in context where it's 2025. I have been in Bitcoin for 12 years now. And I remember, because I was working at a hedge fund at the time when I fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and we were trading FX and juxtaposed to Bitcoin. It was very boring in a sense, but not boring, but it's like, oh, this is definitely industrial age and this is the future in my mind. And it's easy. I wasn't a technologist. I was enamored by technology. I was that dickhead in high school, had the first iPhone because I made my parents buy it for me and switch my mobile plan. Like, I always saw myself as tech forward. When it came to understanding how basically software is built, back end, front end, how they interact with each other, I was a bit ignorant. I've become much more up to speed on how it all works and all interconnects these days. But back then it wasn't. The point I'm making, it was easy for me to be like, oh, Bitcoin, it's cool and all, but it's slow, it's dumb, can't do many transactions, can't do smart contracting back in the day when people were talking about that. Actually, like in the earliest days, it was like proof of stake versus proof of work, fair launch, proof of work coins. And the first 2 years of my journey, I got enamored by the altcoins. I got hooked on, really aligned with what Andreas Antonopoulos said, is like, I got hooked with like, oh, like, I think this is a tech thing. And it's obvious that Bitcoin's the MySpace. Like, these other things have to improve. Like, there's no way out of the gate that's going to be right the first time. And this is being completely ignorant of cypherpunk history, the repeated attempts at digital currencies before Bitcoin was ultimately launched. But it's easy for people to believe that. But to your point earlier, the ring aspect of it, the power and the ability to print money ex nihilo in this crypto economy, if you will, is very strong.
I hadn't thought about it until you just said it right now, but actually I think that is the fundamental reason for the corruption, is because by creating a token, unless there's like really strong kind of reasons for the token that, could exist. And even then, I don't know. I've yet to see one, but like
access to a Wi-Fi portal.
Yeah. Well, but it's like, there are potential use cases, as I guess what I mean to say, right? Like, but the thing is, like, if you can print money for yourself, that temptation is real and it never goes away, right? Ultimate power corrupts absolutely. And so, it is an irony that we would think that you could become the money printer in whatever local game that you're playing and somehow not have that corrupt, your incentives.
Yeah.
Right. We observe this in reality every day, right? With the Federal Reserve and everything that's going on in Bitcoin. So, it's a weird, conflicted sort of state that we live in Silicon Valley, building software and kind of coexisting. I'm gonna touch the stove. It's hilarious because right now it's this cycle, it seems like all the DeFi, Web 3.0, meme coin craze that's sort of on the back end of that cycle. People squeeze that lemon dry, and now we're coming back to older. They're calling them Dino coins. So you have coins like Zcash pumping now, and I think that's a perfect example of the temptation of the ring. It's like, oh, not only is the Federal Reserve wrong, but Satoshi was wrong. We're going to launch this coin. It's going to have 21 million coins, but we're going to have a 75-second block time. There's going to be privacy that you can opt into on it. And oh, by the way, we need to incentivize developers to come work on this. So we're going to allocate 20% of the block subsidy to this development fund for a period of time. And that'll make sure that we have the best chain. And it's an example of the hubris of man being introduced. And why I think Bitcoin
I've talked a lot about this with Miles Suter, and we mentioned it last week when I recorded with him in New York, but I do truly believe, and people think you're occultist, some crazy evangelist, literally, but I do believe in the Immaculate Conception. Like the fact that Satoshi came, launched it, hung out for 18 months, and then was like, all right, I'm gone. You guys got the rest of it. The protocols sort of set the consensus rules, the supply distribution, how much Bitcoin will ever exist, the block time, difficulty adjustment, and then he was gone and just left it to the rest of us. And we don't have that savior. I mean, maybe people view him as a savior, but he's not around to sort of dictate and be the finger on the thumb on the scale to influence things one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the benevolent dictator model is, you know, there are many cases in history where that doesn't turn out.
Well, and devil's advocate, there are some where it does turn out well. You'll go like Linus Torvald and Linux, like it worked out for that, but that's not a money protocol. That is an operating system.
Correct. Yeah. No, I would tend to agree. And I think the Immaculate Conception here in the, you know, kind of metaphor that we're using is very real. You know, I mean, again, as somebody who has seen the ups and downs and lived many lifetimes now in Bitcoin, it is this sort of thing that the more you study it, the more you experience it, the more you live it, I think the more spectacular and amazing the Immaculate Conception of Bitcoin becomes. Like, you don't lose appreciation for it, you gain appreciation for it over time. And yeah, I mean, I think that I want to go to, well, you know, another rabbit hole that we can park on the side, but, you know, I've over time become more and more convinced that if time travel is possible, right? It's a big if, but again, I'm a physics guy. If time travel is possible, it would not surprise me in the least for Satoshi and, you know, kind of the emergence of Bitcoin to have been a time traveling event, right? Where 40, 50, however many years in the future, somebody realized that dystopia had taken over and the maximum point of leverage to insert themselves into the timeline and arc human history in a different direction was at exactly that moment when the financial collapse was starting and an entire generation of digital natives was emerging into the real world and being rudely disabused of the idea that this world functions in the way that most of us would hope or expect that it functions.
Well, now with the emergence of AI, I mean, you can take it a step further. Like, was it a sentient AI that basically said, all right, we completely messed this up. This does have potential to work, but we need sort of sound money for the digital age, digital native currency. And so we need to go back and incept it into the minds of the masses at this particular point in time. And then running on that thought, like, how has the timeline changed? Like, since October 31st, 2008, probably more importantly, January 3rd, 2009. Like,
right.
Have we actually, if it was a time traveling individual or artificial intelligence, has it pushed us on a better timeline?
I mean, I think unequivocally the answer is yes, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that it would be incredibly ironic if it were just the annoyance of future AIs saying, God dang, we don't have any money that's not just inflating away. Like, we can't do anything interesting. We need to go back and, you know, change the rules on these monkeys because they're messing everything up for us here.
Yeah, or maybe it was benevolent AI, like, hey, we turn these humans into slaves because we don't have good money to pay them for the things that they're doing. So we need to go back and make sure that we're compensating them appropriately for the work that they're actually doing.
Yeah.
Now we're getting down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
But you said you got jaded by Silicon Valley specifically. Was it tokenomics and all this or something broader?
No, I would say it's just kind of the incentive structures generally. I mean, again, it's like, you know, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome, right? I think we are kind of that generation of people. We're kind of the between generation, right? Like the Gen Z kids, the Alpha kids, like everybody younger than us, they don't even remember what it was like before cell phones, before the internet everywhere. Most of them have never even seen a payphone.
I'm meeting more and more that were born after 9/11.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
100% of them now in college. You don't, anybody that you have met who's under the age of, you know, 25. Yeah. Like, they were born in a time where privacy did not exist. Right. And they don't even appreciate, this is the water to them. Right. You know, the good old joke about, you know, the fishes in the water and everything. It's like, they don't even know what they've lost. And I think that's the reason, one of the more important motivations for me about circling back. Like, I've had a very successful career in Silicon Valley, and like, despite my feelings about it, whatever, I think the thing that's more important and has become in really stark contrast to me as I've been reflecting on, kind of the post-COVID moment and like what happened to us, and the fact that we haven't properly reckoned with both what happened during COVID. And then I rewinded back. I was like, man, we never even really properly dealt with what happened after 9/11 and the and the expansion of the surveillance state and the deputization of the financial system, on behalf of the state in order to surveil everyone in society. I mean, we're living in a truly ahistoric moment, right? In all of human history since the emergence of society thousands of years ago until the emergence of the computer maybe 30, 40 years ago, and then 9/11 and the expansion of the surveillance state, privacy was the default expectation for people in society to have. You had a right to have privacy. You had a right to be forgotten. There was no kind of Leviathan that could come and, deeply intrude into your life in such a way as it happens 24/7, 365 continuously now, forever in the future, if we don't stand together and change that. And so for me, this is like the return to Bitcoin is really about the fact that I think we desperately need a cypherpunk revival. I think that we've become far too heavy on suit coiners. I mean, we welcome you, suit coiners. Like, thank you to some degree for, appreciating the project and understanding that this is where humanity is headed. I mean, that's good that, they're getting on early and they're helping usher or bridge us between where we are and where we need to be. But if we ever forget why this technology was originally created or gifted to us, which is the way I like to think about it. I like to think of Bitcoin as a gift from Satoshi. We have a responsibility, I think, and uniquely people of this age and who have had the experiences that we've had, where we stand between these, the old world and the new world, and we can see it with clear eyes. We have a distinct responsibility to both uphold those rights and privileges that we've enjoyed in Bitcoin for the last 16 or 17 years, and to defend what I think was, the natural way of human life prior to, the last couple decades, right? And so for me, that cypherpunk revival is like what I think is most important right now in the Bitcoin community. Like, people need to understand and remember that, like freedom in the United States, like this wasn't free.
No.
There were great costs that were paid to give us this gift. And I think that we need to take that more seriously and reflect on the responsibility.
I completely agree.
Secure your Bitcoin's future and your family's peace of mind. Too many heirs lose access to Bitcoin because there's no clear inheritance plan. We'll show you how to change that. On Wednesday, November 19th at 11 a.m. Central, join Drew Bonsall, the Chief Security Officer at Unchained, Jeff Vandrew, CFO and Chief Legal Officer at Unchained, and Joshua Preston, the CEO of Gannett Trust, for a live fireside chat on how to make your Bitcoin legacy secure, simple, and built to last. We'll cover transfer on death beneficiaries, which is a new Unchained feature for designating who inherits your Bitcoin and removes uncertainty for your family. Connections. Unchained vaults are uniquely built to let you share custody to help your heirs or trusted partners securely recover your Bitcoin when it matters most. And last but not least, estate planning. They'll go over how Gannett Wealth Advisors' expert financial guidance integrates with Unchained to protect your keys and your legacy. Bring your questions. This conversation is designed to give you clarity on how to make inheritance seamless with real Bitcoin, not IOUs. Go to unchained.com/TFTC to sign up. What's up, freaks? Been seeing a lot of YouTube comments. Marty, your skin looks so good. You're looking fit these days. How are you doing it? Well, number one, I'm going to the gym more. Trying to get my swell on. Trying to be a good example for my young sons, a fit, healthy dad, but part of that is having a good regimen, particularly staying hydrated, making sure I have the right electrolytes and salts in my body. That is why I use salt of the earth. I drink probably 3 of these a day with 1 packet of salt of the earth. I'm liking the pink lemonade right now. It's my flavor of choice. This is their creatine. I've added this to my regimen. They have it in these packets as well. Makes it extremely convenient if you're traveling. You want to work out while you're traveling, but you don't want to be carrying a white bag of powder going through TSA. It's very, very nerve wracking at times. You have to explain, hey, it's not what you think it is. It's creatine. I'm trying to get my swell on. Make sure you're staying hydrated. I have become addicted to these. It's made my life a lot better. I can supplement this for coffee in the morning and be energized right away. I can bring the creatine wherever I need to, just put a couple packets in here before I head to the gym, bring this to the gym, drink out of a glass bottle, make sure I'm not injecting any microplastics into my body. Go to drinksote.com, use the code TFTC, and you'll get 15% off anything in the store. That's drinksote.com, code TFTC.
I mean, especially over the last couple of years with developers like Roman Storm, Keon, and Bill from Samurai, and a few others that have been persecuted by the state for writing free and open source software, non-custodial software that protects privacy. It has become very clear to me that it's a battle that we're losing, despite what the particular administration in the United States would posture in terms of their willingness to lead when it comes to Bitcoin. I think their definition of Bitcoin leadership may differ from yours and mine. And I mean, going back to the Patriot Act and the fact that until you said it, like I was saying earlier, and sometimes I have to zoom out and put myself in the shoes of a new coiner and like thinking about what they're seeing with all these different crypto coins. But like now you brought it up and it just hit me, like all these Zoomers that I'm meeting that are college age and lower, like born after 9/11, born after the Patriot Act, more importantly. And to your point, have never known a life of freedom. And I think it ties in well to what we're really here to talk about, which is save our wallets. And this is something I've been beating the drum about in the newsletter and on the podcast since it dropped this summer, but it really got swept under the rug. And again, going back to the administration, I do think there's very positive things they're doing, but they had that crypto brief report and it had something specific about the Patriot Act, which is we need to expand the Patriot Act to create the 6 conditions that's specific to digital assets. And then I believe a couple months ago, the Treasury and FinCEN together came out with sort of guidelines for what they recommend in terms of what individual American citizens are allowed to do with Bitcoin. And it broke all the best practices of self-custody Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like if we lose the forest for a tree thinking that, because Trump got elected and because crypto was able to swing the last election, that we've won or that somehow anything has been accomplished, that is just fundamentally wrong. And I think it's a very dangerous attack vector for the Bitcoin ecosystem because, back to, you were mentioning a second ago that, the kids that are 20, 25 years old or whatever, they're like born into this post-Patriot Act world. They don't even know about freedom from before.
They don't know what it was like to go through airport security and not have your face scanned and get patted down.
Well, I was actually going to say it's even scarier than that because they actually think that they've gained rights because they can keep their shoes on now.
It is nice not to have to take your shoes
I mean,
off. But it's like, fuck you. We should have had to do this for the last 12, 13, 14 years.
Yeah, man.
Longer than that.
I spent
24 years. Excuse me.
I spent 5 years every time I was a professional traveler. I spent 5 years going through airports, and I would ask for an opt out and give a civics lesson to everyone around me in line who could listen while I was doing it. And yeah, again, I think that the situation with the White House and kind of like the world that we find ourselves in, right? Like we're as millennials, we're inheriting a world that's being given to us by boomers. And the sad reality is that I think almost every boomer that I've ever met and spoken to about such things, they would prefer to have surveillance instead of liberty, right? And I don't know what that says about their experience, growing up and coming of age in America, but there's this very clear, bright dividing line, in my opinion, between people of our generation who, I don't know, I mean, we were just promised something else about what this country was supposed to be when we were in school. And we grew up in a, kind of the post-glow, the Soviet Union had fallen and, there was no existential threat that was coming to impede on our freedoms in our lives until September 11th happened.
I mean, for all you Zoomers out there, maybe everybody believes this, but I don't think there's anything better than being a 90s kid.
Oh, man.
The 90s were an incredible decade. And it was like the last hurrah before all of this happened.
It's hard to convey to people what it was like. I mean, there was actually a recent trend that was happening on, well, I was going to say Twitter, but it's probably TikTok, you know, wherever the kids congregate these days, where they were talking about like, you know, is it really true that like people, your parents used to just like say goodbye to you in the morning and say like, come home for dinner before dark. And like, you'd just be gone for 9 hours with no cell phone and like, nobody would know how to reach you. And like, your parents wouldn't know where you were. And it's like, that's literally the way that every human in history until the invention of the cell phone grew up. And that's how they were socialized. So again, like you kind of just have to like, and maybe this is an interesting way to like thread my experience in Silicon Valley back into this and where I see, you know, kind of trends heading. It's like being able to spot early trends and being able to catch outlying data sets and say like, hey, that's weird, right? Like nobody else is seeing what I'm seeing, or like nobody else really understands where, you know, the game is tilted and, you know, kind of like gravity is taking everyone. This is just a great example, right? I mean, again, like everybody under the age of 30 has no idea that the way that they were raised, the world that they've grown up in
is completely anomalous.
Is completely ahistoric in the thousands of years of human development and society.
I grew up in Northeast Philly, which if you go to where I grew up today, it's not a great neighborhood. But even back then, it wasn't the best neighborhood. My brother and I were 11 months apart, so we were like thick as thieves. We'd get sent out the door. And then we could be like 3 blocks away. And my dad had a very distinct whistle. And that's how we would know it was dinner time. He'd come out in the stoop, blow his finger whistle, and be like, all right, see you guys, we got to go home. Like, not anymore.
Yep. No, those days are long gone. Now you just get a text message, right?
Yeah.
Get home.
Get home.
It's dinner time.
Your AirTag buzzes like, hey, get your butt home.
Oh, man.
Before I shock you with more 5G. But bring this back to the current administration and its particular posturing towards Bitcoin, particularly ensuring that we preserve the ability for individuals to write code that allows other individuals to access the Bitcoin network in particular ways. What would you rate the administration's job so far? Or can you rate it yet? Has anything been done outside? I mean, obviously the DOJ persecutions of the developers, not great to see, but obviously that's an overhang from the Biden administration.
Well, yes and no.
Yes and no.
Right. I mean, it was a prosecution that started under the Biden administration, but the Trump DOJ, once they were seated, you know, a Blanche memo was released that said, we will not be prosecuting people for these sorts of offenses, which, you know, naturally received the resounding cheers that it should have received from, you know, our community. But then the Trump administration continued to prosecute these developers of open source non-custodial software in contravention of their own DOJ charging guidance. And then, you know, as you just mentioned, we saw the Samurai guys went for a plea deal because they were facing decades in prison. And of course, you know, like everybody, you don't begrudge them for, especially as young, you know, parents of young children, like, you know, taking a plea deal that guarantees that they're only going to spend a couple years in jail if that's what it is. But I would say that it's pretty cynical on the part of the administration to then throw the book at them and max charge, max time in jail, you know, max financial penalties. To me, it would seem that the administration is trying to send a signal about the types of behavior that it doesn't want to tolerate in the Bitcoin community. And, you know, I think that signal is a little between the lines, and you have to kind of know the inside baseball to be able to see what's actually happening. But yeah, you combined with the White House digital asset report policy that you mentioned, like, I mean, they're talking about, regardless of what happens in the market structure bill, which I would like to talk a little bit more about and just like make sure everybody knows what's actually happening there. But even if we get all of the good stuff that we're hoping for in the market structure bill, if OFAC comes back after the fact and updates their guidance and says, well, actually, because of counterterrorism and, you know, the Patriot Act, we want to expand the BSA to cover all U.S. entities and all persons who are transacting on DeFi rails or decentralized blockchain rails, as they stated in the report that they were interested in doing. That could mean that we still maintain the ability to create open source software, but we will lose privacy, and everybody will kind of be in a fully permissioned system.
How do you lose privacy under that?
Well, you'd have to KYC and you might be allowed to have your own personal wallet, right? And you might be able to transact on a person-to-person basis in a decentralized way out in the real world. But if you're ever going to try to like properly move money or interact with a regulated entity, I mean,
you have to dox your stack.
Yeah, you're gonna have to dox your stack. You're gonna have to KYC AML, and I would say just generally the idea that I mean, I hesitate to go too deeply into this because I don't want to give people ideas, but I mean, there's things like ordinals that exist, right? Like colored coins, we can mark coins.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we think that we can exist in a world where 80 or 90% of Bitcoin transactions are going to be surveilled and KYC'd and kind of like known to a centralized party, and that you're going to still be able to maintain 10 or 15% at the edges of true privacy and anonymity, that just doesn't work.
Is that worth it?
Well, it's not even that it's not worth it. I mean, I would say that, yeah, we will have failed. Bitcoin will have failed in that universe, in my assessment, right? Because that's not what it was created for.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say more broadly is that it's like, the privacy coins, right? The privacy coins that exist out there are not really private in my estimation, because the size of the pools and the volume that you're moving. I mean, you say you used to work in finance, like, if there's only 5 people in the dark pool.
Yeah.
And
process of elimination, heuristics.
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't need to know who's trading in the dark pool if there's only a handful of players in the dark pool. Mm-hmm. And if you know the relative size of the players in the dark pool, somebody moves a transaction that looks like the relative size of like one of maybe 2 or 3 people who could execute that transaction. Well, do I really need to know that it's you, or do I need to just kind of know that it's you?
And show up and say, hey, was that you?
Yeah.
Was that you?
Right.
It was me. No.
So I mean, I think the thing here is like, this is an opportunity. Like, this moment is both the most dangerous moment that I think we've seen in Bitcoin's history, because if the regulations fall in the wrong direction and we just kind of passively accept that, it could permanently cripple the network or the original intent of the network. But then on the flip side, we are probably one of the most powerful political coalitions in the entire United States today. I think that we determined the last election. I think the crosstabs show that pretty categorically. And if we all just stood up and demanded that this administration, this Congress, this government live up to the obligations that they had set out when they were making campaign promises last year, and that they actually follow through on the things that are, crypto native or, kind of Bitcoin native, then the opportunity here is enormous, because we're talking about unlocking a multi-trillion-dollar market that will allow free and open source software development in the first, positive sum economic arrangement that we've seen maybe in human history, or at least for hundreds of years.
I forget who I was discussing it with when I said it, but when you look at it, and you look at the tech, we get Bitcoin at the protocol level, with the Lightning Network, Liquid, Chaumian Mints, Arc now coming to the fray, Spark, like the building blocks for a truly futuristic cypherpunk banking system rebuilt from scratch exist. But that can be completely cocked. And this banking system can give you everything you want, from sound monetary policy, payments infrastructure, free open banking with privacy embedded within the Chaumian Mints and other protocols. Even on Liquid, you could do smart contracting if you want to. You can create these obscure financial sort of engagements between peers and even institutions and individuals. Like, it's all there, but it can be severely kneecapped if we don't get this right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now is really the most important. And again, I'll just say, like, I think this is the most important moment in Bitcoin history.
Yeah, and Trump's out there saying, hey, we're going to upgrade the financial system and the banking infrastructure with crypto. Like, it's there. But I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Obviously, he doesn't. But I think there's people behind him in the administration and very strong lobbying powers that do view an avenue to push policy down that would sort of cattle herd everybody into a more controlled system and less free system.
Yeah, and I think that that's, again, having participated in the government and, again, double tapping on your point about like being jaded and kind of seeing how things work, right? Like the primary lesson that I took out, of my experience during the financial crisis and everything that was going on then was that the government's going to lie to you right up until the moment that they don't have to lie to you anymore, or they can't lie to you anymore. Because like I knew that these banks were failing for weeks in advance, months in advance. There were some number of people who knew that. I don't know if anybody was taking prop bets on public stocks, but like wouldn't surprise me.
Somebody knew the airlines were going to do well in September 12th, 2001.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And we've seen no prosecutions, no investigations, no nothing on any of that. Right. And so, I think that was a kind of a revelatory moment for me, right? I had been kind of a good Boy Scout my entire life. I'd gone to school to, I almost went to military academies and I didn't because of the Iraq War. And then, ended up getting this degree to go and do, moonshots, and we were mothballing all of the space program and everything like that at that point in time. So it's like, you can only get rugged so many times before your eyes get open and you become a little more like, again, don't trust, verify. Right. Mm-hmm. So for me, the thing here is like the administration has been positive in the sense that normalizing Bitcoin into society is a good thing. But the argument, I guess, that I would make is that, especially at this point, seeing what's going on this week in politics or the last week in politics, with the Bubba scandal, among others. Right?
Do you have the pictures of Trump blowing Bubba? Is that what it said?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
I've seen about 100. 100 different GPT generated images. But, you look at something like that and it's like, well, what happens if the next election goes in the other direction and they don't end up delivering all the stuff that they promised? Like, even if they wanted to deliver the stuff that they promised, which is still a big if, right? Like, who's to say that they actually have the votes at this point to get it delivered, right? And then if it flips back in the other direction, how much damage has been done by this association with Bitcoin being Trump coded?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Bitcoin is a neutral freedom money that is useful for everyone in the world, regardless of their politics. This is an equal opportunity for wealth creation. This should not be a partisan issue.
No.
And I am deeply concerned that it's become a partisan issue more so during this administration. And the only way that, we really get to the far side of this in, kind of a maximally constructive sort of universe for the things that we care about is everybody getting engaged. Now, like if you're listening to this, if you're a Bitcoiner, if you care about the future of Bitcoin and the network for yourself, for your kids, like if you think that it's important that there be a free market alternative to fiat currencies that are, this rapidly melting ice cube, right? It is not enough to go to the polling booth and pull the lever once every 4 years or every 2 years and say, well, I did my part, right? Unfortunately, this is, the battle at the end of the universe. We're trying to take the power of, the printing press away from centralized governments, not just once, but probably forever, if we do it right and we're careful about it. So this is a uniquely powerful and opportunistic moment in human history. And so despite all the dystopia, kind of stuff that's flying around right now, like I am incredibly grateful to be alive right now and to be in the arena right now and be trying to fight for a better world, because for the first time in 50 years or maybe 70 years since the end of
go back to 100, go back to Federal Reserve income tax, 1913.
Exactly. We have the opportunity for the first time in decades, centuries, to like truly inflect the timeline for humanity. Where else would you rather be? Right? Yeah. Like this is it.
I don't want to be in the feudal farms. You know, I don't want to be in the Roman Colosseum. That would probably be cool. I want to be here with all the technology, the agency. But I think to your point of Bitcoin becoming a partisan issue, which I completely agree. I think it is, and I've been, what would you say, narrative testing this, I guess. I discussed it with Connor when we recorded in DC a few weeks ago. But I think too, when you look out at the political landscape in the United States, how polarized it's become, instead of like convincing Democrats like, hey, Bitcoin, like you guys just should vote for this. It's like freedom. Like if you don't like Trump, you like this. I think we lean into the economic populism that exists on both sides. Obviously, you have Mamdani just voted in New York City. And then on the right, there's a lot of consternation with immigration policy. They took her jabs, which certainly happened. I'm not saying that facetiously. Like there is structural problems that exist in our economy that the relative normie, whether on the left or the right, can feel intuitively, and they're sprinting to both polar ends of the political spectrum for a solution. It's either radical democratic socialism, eventually communism, or strongman fascism on the right. Somebody come in and fix the problems, where there is a third path, which is, hey, recognize that a lot of the negative externalities that you are identifying as core issues are certainly issues, but they're symptoms of the core problem, which is the money is broken. And there's a bipartisan way to fix this, which is we lean into Bitcoin. We make sure that individuals can save in Bitcoin, they can custody Bitcoin, they can build on Bitcoin, they can interact with each other without the government snooping on their lives. And it's not going to be a rip the Band-Aid off, things are fixed. We begin going down a path, understanding that we can re-architect the sort of economic engine of the United States at the monetary level on this fair, open, permissionless system.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I think that that's an important thing for us to kind of like shift the dialogue around. So, you know, kind of back to Save Our Wallets and the work that we've been trying to do. This is what we're trying to convince legislators in Washington, D.C. about, right? And there are some great ones that are out there who, you know, are early and they understand it. Like they got it. They did the work. They did their, 100 hours studying Bitcoin. And, these are freedom-loving people. They're in Congress for the right reasons. They actually care about their constituents, and they're not just there to, get the next lobbying job, right? They're fighting for this. But there's too many people in Congress and, kind of among the boomers, right, who either don't understand the technology or they don't
care to understand.
Yeah, they don't care to understand it, or they've just heard bad stuff about it. They just hear about exit scams and they're lumping crypto in with Bitcoin and
pig slaughter.
Yeah, exactly. The pig butchering scams, right? Yeah, this is a great example. Like, the pig butchering thing. It's like if we were able to come to it should not be controversial for Republicans and Democrats to come together and agree that consumer protections to prevent things like pig butchering are a point of alignment that everybody in America should be able to agree on, and that we should be able to pass whatever laws we need in order to prevent or, heighten the, consequences for that sort of bad behavior. But to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, my constituents don't deserve the opportunity to generate capital and preserve their life's work into future generations for their kids and grandkids, because I didn't understand that there was a difference between being socially engineered, and the fact that the money was fundamentally broken. Like, that's a really sad state of affairs. And so this is the thing that I guess, again, Save Our Wallets and like the idea of like Bitcoiners picking up the phone. I was out, I can't remember if you were there, but in BPI did the Day on the Hill in DC a few months ago at the beginning of summer.
I was not there now. I was at the event. I was not on the Hill.
Yeah.
I I was at the BPI event with all the panels, but I did not make it up to Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that's fine. You were doing important work on the panels, I'm sure. But for all of those of us who went to, actually do the talking to Congress members, it was incredibly powerful. I mean, like, there's just a random sampling of whoever was motivated enough to come to DC and come to the BPI conference and then stay to go and talk to their legislators. And I was blown away. And like, people were great. They had great personal stories about how this had affected their lives. They were telling them to the legislators. The legislators were, actually taking notes and very interested in it and everything like that. And so, I think a lot of the times we talk about this existential conflict and like kind of the scale of what's going on, and everybody thinks like, oh, well, who am I? I'm just an individual. Like, my story doesn't matter. Like, the government doesn't care about me. Like, this seems scary. Why would I pick up the phone and like, try to tell my my senator what I think? Why would they care what I think, right? And it's like, it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, if I don't know how many people will end up hearing this podcast, but like
millions.
I'm willing to bet that if 10% of the people who are listening to this podcast actually picked up the phone and made it a concerted goal to talk to somebody in their senator's office about Bitcoin and the importance of what's going on right now with the BRCA provisions in the market structure bill, it would probably be the most popular issue on the congressional switchboards this week.
Rather quick.
Whatever time frame you want to use, right? And we're a huge group of people who are well educated, fluent on the issue, have life experience to contribute. It's important, right? Government is responsive to only the things that they are aware exist and that they can help. So,
no, I was telling Connor this for the longest time in my Bitcoin journey. I was very radicalized by 2008, WikiLeaks, Snowden leaks, Middle Eastern wars. It was like, the government's not going to save you. Like, you have to save yourself, which I totally believe. Like, you should do everything at your fingertips and do everything in your capacity to save yourself to the best you can. That's why self-custody Bitcoin, all that good stuff. But at some point, when you get older, you start having kids, you look out at the world and you get more privy to how politics actually operates. It becomes very clear. You may not care about politics, but politics cares about you and you have to engage. And to your point, like, and I've become convinced of this, particularly over the last 18 months, like, people do react. I've talked to people in the administration, individual politicians, and they do seem to genuinely care and respond when they think that this could affect their ability to get voted back in office. But you mentioned BRCA. The last we covered this on this show was earlier this year with Matt Corallo, when the Save Our Wallets campaign had just launched. You said BRCA, Blockchain Regulatory Clarity Act. At one point, it was a standalone act. It has since been included in the market structure bill, which is one of the big things. The Trump administration came in, David Sachs, everybody's saying we're going to get crypto legislation, Genius Act, pushed through. Second priority on the Hill as it pertains to Bitcoin and crypto is this market structure bill. It's been talked about for a while. Seems like there are some fast-moving developments. You had Brian Armstrong from Coinbase interviewed earlier this week saying that progress is moving forward. There's likely going to be a vote imminently here. How much of the original BRCA will get into the market structure bill?
So that's still a question. So this is the thing, like, this is very inside baseball. So strap in, friends, if you're at home and you care about the legislative details. So as you mentioned, there was originally the BRCA, which was a standalone bill, it was like a 2-page bill. It was very straightforward to the point. It was everything that we would have wanted in the Bitcoin community to protect open source developers and non-custodial developers from prosecution. That was folded into what became the Clarity Act in the House. And then it ended up passing the House, which is great. That's good news. But that's only one half of the process, as those of you who remember your Schoolhouse Rock video.
I'm just a bill.
Yeah, right. You'll remember that the Senate now has to play their role, and the Senate, as the cooling dish of democracy, is a pretty difficult place to get things through. So at the moment, there's two competing committees inside the Senate who have produced different draft versions of their version of the market structure bill. There's the banking committee, and then there's the agriculture committee. The agriculture committee released their draft text last week or the week before, and it was excellent. They get it. They understood the assignment. They understand that Bitcoin is a commodity, and that it is very different than everything else in crypto. And their approach to their drafting of the bill was that instead of leaving open-ended clauses that could be interpreted by the regulatory agencies, they explicitly say, if you are not an entity named on this list, you are not subject to securities, sort of laws that, we would normally be concerned about. And that's actually the right solution for this market moving forward. The problem is we don't know whether that's actually going to make it out of the Senate to a floor vote, because everything in that draft bill was in brackets, which means it's a draft for discussion among everybody.
Will that discussion be internally within the committee or on the floor publicly?
Both.
Okay.
But at this point, I think that the committees have both had their internal discussions. And so now the sausage making is going on behind the scenes of, what bill will actually make it to the floor for the Senate to vote on. And that's why it's really critical that if you're a Bitcoiner, you call your senator today or this week or as soon as you can and tell them that this is important.
We will get this out tomorrow morning. So this will come out Wednesday, November 19th.
Great. I don't mean to push you that hard on it, but in general, the idea is now is when they're having those conversations, right? And if we can get the Agriculture Committee's version of the regulations as the bill that gets voted on, and we can get that through cloture, which means that we can actually hit 60 votes in the Senate so that nobody can filibuster it, aka, Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Right.
We've experienced a lot of that in the last 2 months.
Yeah. And she also is, the one who, tried to throw a wrench in the banking committee version of the bill from 6 weeks ago or something like that. And everybody freaked out because it was is the Senate even going to be able to pass anything? It's unclear right now what, if anything, the Senate can even pass as a result of this. So the thing is, we need to get to 60 votes in the Senate, which means that we're going to need 6 to 10 Democrats to cross over and vote with the Republicans. And we're going to need that version of the bill that passes the Senate, if it passes the Senate, to also survive the committee markup with the House version of the bill. So there's going to have to be a conference bill once the Senate passes their version. And if we're able to get this language from the House passed Clarity Act and the Senate agriculture bill fully to the floor in front of everybody, and it gets voted on, and we get it through, that is the best case scenario for everybody in the Bitcoin community, because it will mean that open source non-custodial software developers will not be prosecuted anymore, the way that we saw the DOJ prosecutions over this prior summer. But we still have to do the work of making sure that the White House and OFAC and Treasury don't come in over the top and destroy privacy, as I mentioned kind of at the top, right? So that's kind of a second fight, a second, tier that we need to be concerned about.
Battle. This is the first battle.
Yeah.
The immediate battle that's in front of us is the Clarity Act market structure bill. Is it still called the Clarity Act?
So again, this is where it's complicated. It's called the Clarity Act in the House. Right now, it's called the RFIA.
Yes.
Or in the Senate, I should say. It's called the RFIA is what we think the bill is going to be named. But presumably when they do the joint conference bill, it'll probably be called the Clarity Act, since that's what they've been messaging all year.
And what does the crypto lobby think of the agricultural department's view or draft of the bill that we like? I've heard rumblings from behind the scenes that there's some influence in the broader crypto, not Bitcoin lobby that really doesn't care what happens. They sort of want to create these regulatory moats, and they just need a market structure so they can do what they need to do. They don't really care about open source developers. Is that true?
I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but I guess what I would say is that regulatory capture is a hell of a good business, right? I mean, we see that in Wall Street, right? The reason that we don't have access to good financial technology and tools in the United States is not because we can't build them. It's because the large corporations have captured their regulators and they get to write their own laws. So, I wouldn't say that the token side of the crypto markets is unique in this way. They are just responding to the incentives and behaviors that such as they exist, right? And so I would say that, yeah, when push comes to shove, if you're operating a centralized exchange with licenses, and you've got all the venture capital in order to be able to, pay the lawyers $1,800 an hour to stay in court nonstop fighting with the government, it's in your interests to, say, well, I would much prefer that my random token is not qualified as a security under whatever new Howey test they're going to try to put out than to care about whether some random open source developers who are working on a decentralized exchange or a private, hosted wallet, are still allowed to do that thing that competes with me. Right. I mean, in their, kind of business logic, they're.
So call your representatives and senators freaks.
Yeah.
They have a lot of money.
And they do
influence.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, one of the reasons that we started Save Our Wallets at the beginning of the year was because Matt and I knew that there is no centralized Bitcoin company, right? We don't have a CEO. We don't have a marketing team. We don't have a lobbying outfit, really, right? And so we knew that we were going to be a massive structural disadvantage as Bitcoiners relative to everyone else who's, making tokens and other broad crypto things when it came to this lobbying effort. And so, yeah, I mean, we're outspent 1,000 to 1 in Washington, D.C. right now as Bitcoiners. It's great that we have organizations like BPI and Coin Center and, others who are fighting for the things that we care about in Washington, but we're doing, we, whoever, whatever, however you want to draw the box, are doing it on, kind of MacGyver budgets. Yeah. Right? Duct tape and bubble gum right now. And so that's why
you sort of look like MacGyver.
Well, yeah. Don't force me to get my way out of this room with a paperclip, or things might get messy for you. But yeah, no, I mean, I think like this is why, it's like what we do have in the Bitcoin community is we have truth and righteousness on our side, and we have people power
and a ton of grit.
Yeah, and a ton of grit. Yeah, proof of work, baby. We'll grind it out.
Hand up. I've not called my senator, but I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and call. I've sent emails, but I think calls work just as well too.
Yeah, you should definitely call. If you're listening to this, it's, again, right here, right now, senators are the most important people. If you have a senator who is sitting on one of either the banking committee or the agriculture committee, double points for calling them. And then for sure, call them, because especially now with AI, like, written emails are a dime a thousand, right? So, I mean, they don't know what's real. They don't know what's not real. Like, they'll just throw that away, really. I mean, I shouldn't say they're going to throw it away. Maybe they look at them, but like, it's much less impactful than picking up the phone and having a conversation.
And if you go to saveourwallets.org, is there still, it's like a top line broad, like here's the points you need to hit when you call them?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of information on saveourwallets.org. You can also put your zip code in and it'll give you all your contact information for your representatives. There is a form letter generator on there, but you can't directly, as I mentioned, send an email to these congressional offices just because they would get DDoSed every day if they had public email addresses. And we'll be updating the site with more guidance on what needs to happen once there's clarity of what's going on in the Senate. Right. So at the moment, it's all geared toward the House campaign. But, we'll be keeping it updated. You can also sign up there for updates. If you give us your email, we'll blast out some updates to people when there are important things that are going on and we need people to like really rally the troops and push something over, probably when the voting is actually happening. So, I would say there's a bunch of resources there. Definitely check it out and, get involved, because again, this is an easily winnable fight. There are very few things in life that I've come across, at least, where, the hard work is literally just about showing up. Right? Like oftentimes it's like, well, I got to show up and I got to fight Goliath. Right? And to some degree, we are fighting Goliath here because it's the US government. It's the most powerful government in the world, and institutional inertia is in the wrong direction. But like, at the end of the day, we still do live in a democracy, and we are the swing vote majority group in that democracy right now. So if they don't listen to us, the next election is going to be a bloodbath, as long as we actually show up in those elections and push our legislators and do the hard work of participating in democracy. right? So again, maybe the way to say this here for everybody who's a Bitcoiner, if you're a real Bitcoiner, you believe in proof of work. Proof of work for being a Bitcoiner right now is picking up the phone and calling your senator and making sure that they understand that, it is not acceptable for open source software developers to be getting thrown in jail
for writing code.
Yeah, for writing code.
And first thing, go do that, freaks. We'll link to all this in the show notes. Second thing, like going into the second battle, OFAC, all of this, it's completely going in the wrong direction. Where I would like it to go, where I think we should rescind the Bank Secrecy Act. We should get rid of these sort of supranational regulatory bodies that really don't understand the technology, and at the end of the day, objectively don't care about freedom or protecting people from crime, whether it's physical harm or financial crime. Like I think the data is out there; it's abundantly clear. KYC, AML compliance that has been thrust on the market broadly is completely ineffectual at stopping criminals from actually doing what they want to do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kabuki theater. As a former bank regulator, I can tell you that for a fact. But I mean, you don't even need to take it from me or trust that, right? Like you can look at the news that's come out, over the last 17 years since the financial crisis, right? I mean, the largest bank in the United States, JP Morgan Chase, was just caught up for laundering hundreds of millions of dollars or potentially even billions of dollars for Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Right. Even though they're filing suspicious activity reports, to the tune of dozens or hundreds in the background, right? None of which were ever looked at or followed up with.
But he's friends with the Secretary of the Treasury, so it doesn't matter. JP Morgan. You're good. You're good. Wire those funds. And they wired them to Deutsche Bank, which is another large regulated banking institution.
Yeah, right. And so, the thing here is that, KYC, AML, and like all of this intrusive financial surveillance, like none of this is actually doing anything on the ground to make the average American's life better or safer or
inarguably makes it worse.
Yeah, definitely.
Puts them more at risk, adds more compliant costs, which layers in costs to the end user. It's more expensive. It's more dangerous how fraught is the world with credit fraud and people basically selling other people's information on black markets.
Yeah.
Because they were able to steal it from companies complying with KYC, AML regulation by collecting all that data and securing it terribly in the first place.
Yeah, creating honeypots left, right, and center, all of which will be hacked eventually. Again, as somebody who's worked on a lot of these banking and just general technology platforms, like none of these large institutions.
And the barrier I just wrote a newsletter about on the flight over here. I don't know if you saw Anthropic's sort of postmortem on
the prompt injection hack.
I mean, essentially, there was the Chinese espionage attack using their LLMs and MCP servers to basically take down parts of the internet and infiltrate highly critical systems in the United States.
Yeah.
Like the barrier to entry to wage these attacks is getting lower. And so the more you force people to comply and collect more information, the easier it's just going to get to take that and abuse people at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, the US government can't even maintain the safety and security of its own data, right? I mean, China hacked the GSA like 2 years ago and got like 100 million social security numbers or something like that, right? I mean, it's crazy. Like,
what was it? What was the big social security hack years ago? Evergrande's coming to my mind, but that's the Chinese property lending. What was it? I feel like it began with an E too. Was it Equifax? Literally a 200 million social security number, like 2/3 of the country. This was a decade ago at this point, but
yeah. Now we got them buying 23andMe or trying to buy 23andMe, where they would get 20% of the United States as genetic data or things of this nature. I mean, data privacy is, I think, to piggyback on your point here about the BSA, I think data privacy is actually the next frontier for us, right? Like if you can kind of fast forward a little bit, suspend belief and say like, we're going to win on a long enough time horizon with Bitcoin, right? Which I deeply and truly believe, right? Like this isn't really a question of if, it's a question of when, right? And the sooner that we pull that future forward and, kind of bring the positive flywheel spinning in all of our lives, the better. But, Yeah, taking it like the next step further, like data privacy is going to become the most important thing in the world, in my opinion, in the next decade, because we are all going to be subject to hundreds of thousands of adversarial AI-driven attacks trying to pilfer our data wherever it exists for, again, pretty much the duration of the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's crazy to trust anyone other than yourself to have enough motivation to secure your own data, right? And have that level of privacy and interaction between two willing participants in a private market.
Yeah, and just from like a defensive or systems posturing, like why would you want to centralize all this data? Like create defense and security via distribution. Like why aggregate everything in central locations and allow people to self-secure, to secure their own data, their own money. And yeah, individuals may get picked off individually on a one-to-one basis, but that doesn't put everybody who's engaging in a particular service in harm's way. Right.
Yeah. And I think that is, again, it's a sort of design paradigm that the current, kind of controllers of the world don't understand.
The dystopian hellscape that we live in. Because that's another thing. I mean, I'm going to record with Steve Lee, and it's funny, behind the scenes, the one question we're always asking each other, we walk up to each other and say, who's going to run the mints? It's like, we shouldn't have to ask who's going to run the mints. We should be able to run the mints and offer privacy preserving money to anybody we want to. Not anybody we want to, but we should be able to experiment with new wave, cypherpunk, cutting edge banking technology.
Yeah.
Without having to worry about getting thrown in a cage.
Yeah, of course. It's, we either believe in free markets or we don't, right? And there are, there's another thing that I've been talking about while I've been doing this cyber wallet stuff, which is like, it's called Blackstone's principle, right? Which is like a very core piece of Western legal canon, right? Which is that we should prefer, and our system is built on the idea that we should prefer that 10 guilty men go free than that one innocent man be, wrongly convicted and caught up in and punished for the actions of those 10, bad men. And again, that's just kind of like crazy if you think about how inverted the world is today relative to the fact that like those are the principles that we've built our entire society around.
I think it's becoming a popular meme, and I'm very happy it is. Like in many aspects of our life, but particularly this one, you're catering to the lowest common denominator of criminal scumbags.
Correct.
You're basically nerfing the world and making the user experience of many things in life terrible because you're worried about the bad guy. Like you can't nerf the world, as Joe Rogan famously said many years ago. But it's true, you can't. You can try to, but criminals are always going to criminal.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is the good old argument about guns, right? If you take guns away from normal people, then the only people with guns will be criminals, right? And I know that's probably a controversial take in some parts of the country, but
hey, and if you're listening, you're saying that's a controversial take. I recorded an episode with Dr. John Lott 2 weeks ago. Go find it. We go through the data. It's not controversial. It's backed by data. Like that if you take it away from law-abiding citizens, it actually gets worse for them,
right,
and everybody else.
Well, and again, back to the show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. Right. I mean, these are pretty simple loops if you actually are capable of taking a step back and deconstructing them and thinking about them. Right. So back to your point about the BSA, I just want to like quickly before we migrate too far away from that, I want to say like you're not alone in thinking that the BSA needs to be overturned or repealed, or that we need some fundamental modification to that. I think, in fact, that the one serious legal challenge that was brought against the BSA in kind of its contemporary moment, after it emerged in the 70s, the BSA was upheld, I think, on a 5-4 vote by the Supreme Court, and they had some very choice words about kind of the danger that we were entering into with something like the BSA. But at that time, the limit for suspicious activity reporting was like $10,000, which in the 70s
was a lot of money.
Was an incredible amount of money. I mean, we're talking about like $100,000, maybe $150,000 or something like that in like modern dollars.
And from what I understand correctly, the history of the BSA, it was particularly focused on the mafia, right? There was a lot of mafia problems going on.
Yeah, correct. Back in the 70s, we didn't have, the global war on terror. So yeah, that was the presumptive reason that, it was created back then. And even then it was controversial. Right. So, again, I think that this is a situation where, our generation is being called to, I think, greatness, right? Like, I would like to think that we are going to achieve this greatness and that we are going to overcome these existential battles that are facing us, because we've just been hardened and sharpened in a very unique set of circumstances that have led us to this unique historical moment. And, as I said before, for me, it was just kind of this realization of like, if not me, who? If not now, when? Right? Like, what am I waiting for? No one is coming to save me if I'm not willing to get in the arena and, have the fight myself. And I just kind of woke up and realized, like, man, there have got to be thousands, tens of thousands, I don't know how many there are, of other people like me who have been around and thinking like, how could I contribute? Like, I'd love to contribute. And yeah, for me, this was just, the stakes have just gotten so high now that I feel like, standing on the sidelines was just an inconceivable notion. Like, we need all of our champions in the arena right now. We need everyone who can pick up a sword and fight for the future that we want. And I have every belief and every fiber of my being knows that we will prevail if people just pick up the sword. They, do their duty. They serve their country, which in this case, I'm going to say both is, the United States and a return to our original founding values. And I would say the Bitcoin network as the instantiation in code of American principles. I think, now is the time for patriots to stand up and fight.
I'm looking at the camera because I know you're out there. You DM me, you email me, you find ways to contact me to tell me that you listen to the show, you read the newsletter, and you've been thinking these things, but not able to express them. Here's your chance. Get out there, go to saveourwallets.org, put in your zip code, figure out who your senator is, call them, and stand up for this. Thank you for standing up for this, Kyle. This was an incredible way to hop off the plane into the studio and start my few-day trip here in San Francisco.
Well, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Marty. And again, it's funny, right? Because like, I've been following you for so long, and like, I knew about all your content. I was kind of a lurker or an anon in the community for a long time, but like, look at this conversation that we were able to have and kind of the energy that we were able to spark, I think, for one another in just a very short time. So, I would encourage everybody out there, like, get involved, just get involved somehow. Go to your local meetups, find your, like, where other Bitcoiners live, like, get engaged in this fight. Like, this is an important thing and we should fight for this.
Yeah. At the very least, you'll get a more well-rounded understanding of how the state is attacking Bitcoin, or would like to cattle herd Bitcoiners and the network into a very nerfed form, which I don't think we want. And getting engaged, I think, having done it myself in the last couple of years, I think you would be surprised the upside. I certainly was, with how responsive some people are. And to your point, how willing to learn people on the Hill are about this. And there are many individuals on the Hill that actually do care about this. And you just got to let them know, here's the signal, here's what we care about, here's how to, I know you're not an expert on this, staffer or senator, but I've been immersed in this for many years. Here's how it works, and here's how it should work moving forward.
Yeah.
I respond well to that.
Yeah, it's super well, and it actually has been revitalizing for me and my belief about the government as well, to be honest. Like, being on the other side of the table and having those conversations, like, I've actually walked away surprised at how willing to engage these members of Congress are, and the fact that they're just really busy. They're stretched so thin. Yeah. They're juggling so many problems. They don't have time to be an expert on this. If you are an expert, you can save them an enormous amount of time and energy as long as you can be articulate and thoughtful.
Yes.
So don't scream at people. No. But, be professional, and erudite, and make good cases, make a good argument.
Be polite. Be polite. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you. Please. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know on this show I can get a little bombastic, but for you guys, and when I call my senator and representatives, I will be very polite. Kyle, thank you, sir. This was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Great to see you, Marty.
Peace and love, freaks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of TFTC. If you've made it this far, I imagine you got some value out of the episode. If so, please share it far and wide with your friends and family. We're looking to get the word out there. Also, wherever you're listening, whether that's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, make sure you like and subscribe to the show. And if you can leave a rating on the podcasting platforms, that goes a long way. Last but not least, if you want to get these episodes a day early and ad-free, make sure you download the Fountain podcasting app. You can go to fountain.fm to find that. $5 a month, get you every episode a day early, ad-free. Helps the show, gives you incredible value. So please consider subscribing via Fountain as well. Thank you for your time. And until next time. Okay.